Hey, welcome to the last week of Hashtag Blessed. We've had a great few weeks looking at tithes, offerings, money, generosity, and how we give those things to God. We've got a few questions that we weren't able to cover from last week's Q&A. And so, Carl, you've got 30 seconds to a minute on each question.
Okay.
If you talk too long, we'll just cut you out. That's fine. So the first question is, in Malachi 3, it talks about tithes and offerings, but the former seems to be getting a lot of airtime, kind of shadowing offerings altogether. Are both the same importance? And if so, why is the emphasis on tithing?
Okay, great question. So, we've particularly focused a lot on the tithe. And I think the reason I've done that is that I think we probably find it far easier and we're more comfortable with offerings, and we find it easier to give one off to something that perhaps tugs on our hearts, whereas the monthly discipline of tithing I think is something that throws up a lot more questions, and probably biblically we don't have great clarity around it. And so I really wanted to spend a couple of weeks giving some clarity on tithing. But I think on the last week, when we spoke about Mary and her offering, I spent a bit more time talking about the offering, and actually that there are two stages. There is the tithe, then there is the offering. Both are important, but it is really important to get the tithe right first and then build from there with the offerings.
Cool, great. Question number 2, and this is not my question, just have to clarify that. My husband goes to a different church and handles our finances. How do I go about tithing?
Okay, so husband goes to a different church. How do you handle tithing? I would say have a conversation. That has to be the first port of call. You've got to have a conversation with your husband. So say he goes to another church.
Yeah.
So he goes to another church. So hopefully he understands the principle of tithing, would agree with you on that. I think you just got to have a conversation with him, and it all depends on the income coming into the house. You know, is he the sole earner, or do you both earn? If you're both earning, then actually you could then tithe on your earnings, and he tithes on his earnings into his local church. But I think it all starts with a conversation with one another.
Great, good answer. So question number 3, do I need to tithe on money that is a blessing?
In straight up answer, I would say yes. I think this does challenge us because it's how far do you go with it. So Proverbs talks about tithing on all of your increase. So whenever you receive an increase, we could rephrase that as a blessing, as a gift, whatever it may be. Then actually that's something we should give on. We should tithe on. I think that kind of does pinch us a little bit because, when we start, blessings, let's work those out, inheritance, birthday gifts, if you make money on a house that you sell, they are all blessings. And we do have people, I know people who do tithe on those. I think the thing to remember is you are never going to be worse off if you give as a result of those things. So if you have a standpoint in your life where you give on every blessing, and your heart is right with that, you're never going to be worse off as a result.
Cool. So question number 4, and we've had this in quite a few times. So should I tithe pre or post tax?
So this is a question we bump up against loads. And I know people who give pre-tax and I know people who give after tax. My honest answer is it's up to you. The Bible doesn't say whether we should give pre-tax or post-tax. It's not clear on that. And I think it really just comes down to your own conviction on this. The Bible does say that we should give 10% of our income. So you can interpret that whichever way you want. I know there will be some people that say, no, Carl, you're wrong. It's all about pre-tax. And there'll be some people that say it's all about post-tax. And I think there just kind of identifies, I think we all sit on different parts, in different parts with this. So I'd say it's down to your own conviction. Pray, hear from God, and do what you're comfortable with. I think it's about your heart. Don't create rules. It's about your heart, and it's about being obedient to what you feel God asks you to do.
Great. Cool. So question number 5 is, so the government takes the first fruits in terms of our national insurance. So how can I tithe on the first fruits when it's already been taken?
Again, really good question. I think the first thing I want to say on this, though, is Don't fall into the trap of legalism. Don't fall into a trap where if it doesn't go out on the first day or the first minute after you've been paid, that somehow you've not been obedient to first fruits. That's not the heart with which God is speaking here. I think when it comes to first fruits, what's really important to understand is it's about giving God his portion and creating that space for that to be one of the first things that go out. I think what first fruits challenges is those who say, I want to tithe, but I'm going to see if I've got enough left over at the end of the month. That's what first fruits challenges. And so actually it's about establishing God is first in my life, therefore I'm not going to wait to see how much I have left, but I'm going to give to him first. And so I know that I shared the illustration or the story of my own life where Danielle and I have changed it to the first Sunday of the month, the first day of the month, and that's just something that we wanted to do. I don't think it overly matters whether it goes out the second, the third, the fourth, or the fifth. I think it's just ensuring that it goes out first and not something that you delay to the end to see if you've got enough money left over.
Great. So this is kind of a follow-up question to that. And so if in my heart I prioritize the tithe, does it matter when my rent comes out, if it comes out on the same day?
No, I think that just goes back to the previous question. I don't think so. I think what's really important is that you just establish that God is first in terms of what you're giving to.
Great. And the last question number 7 is, if I'm on benefits, should I tithe?
Okay, so again, question bump up against loads. You can also talk about debt and benefits. Should I tithe if I'm in debt? Should I tithe if I'm on benefits? The question is obviously about benefits. I would say you are not going to be worse off, again, if you tithe on your benefits. I think, we're thankful for the benefit system, thankful that people can have that and have that blessing. And I think ultimately we have to ask the question, is our faith and our trust in the benefit system, or is it in God? And I think ultimately we would want to say, well, our faith is in God, and this is a provision that I'm given, and I want to honor God on the back of that provision. So I would say, yes, tithe if you're on benefits, but be sensible as well and how that plans out and works for your life. Just on the debt thing, I would also say if you're in debt, the Bible doesn't say anything about pausing your tithe or temporarily stopping your tithe if you're trying to deal with debt, and it doesn't say that you're going to go to hell if you don't do that either. The Bible doesn't kind of talk about that. But generally, when I'm talking to people, most stories that I hear is that people who stop tithing are worse off as a result. Like their finances are harder to manage as a result. They don't quite have the same level of blessing or ease with money that they had before. And so I would kind of say, look, if you're in debt, manage that, but don't stop tithing. Keep doing that, because actually our faith is in God to help us to journey through tithing, to journey through debt, and to journey through benefits.
Fantastic. That is all of our questions. Thank you so much for joining us on this series of #Blessed. You can find all the catch-up videos online, but have a great week.